would like to have a warm welcome of Miss Abiola Innis. She's the Executive Director in Caribbean and America's Intellectual Property Organization, and she will gonna speak in the IP in the Caribbean and Latin America, managing amidst COVID-19 and beyond. So, very warm welcome, Dr. Abiola.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am truly delighted to be here among such high-level professionals, academics, students of intellectual property, law, policy, and practice from around the world. I bring you greetings from the Board of Directors and the staff of the Caribbean and America's Intellectual Property Organization. And we trust that this conference will promote understanding, growth of knowledge in the area of international intellectual property law policy and practice, as well as mutually beneficial relationships. I'm pleased to be here, especially because I get to share the perspectives from the Caribbean and Latin American regions, which are not very often heard from, and which are beginning to assume greater significance in the world of IP as more countries begin to make changes to their legal frameworks and policy frameworks with the intention of strengthening IP regimes and making it easier to do business in these economies. Today, more than any time in our history, I believe we're called upon to use some innovations which already exist in ways that were not heard of before and which were not the focus of their design, and to embrace more holistically the use of others in the place of customary applications that many have employed over the years. This is especially so in the developing parts of the world, which are still in many instances implementing technology in richer economies. The Caribbean region, it is true, is not noted for innovation and technology developments which necessitate the filing of patents, industrial designs, trademarks, or utilizing trade secrets. The universities, perhaps, do use some of those things, but it is not so widely used in the wider society and the business community. There's still business done in those areas, especially because of the influence of foreign direct investors. There's still much work to be done in organizing the support systems that help to support the use of IPRs in research and innovation in the university systems. However, copyright is a major part of the thrust for IP protections in these countries, and I make particular reference to the Caribbean countries, because cultural industries and tourism are major contributors to these economies. Filings in the areas of trademarks are also on the increase with foreign direct investments in the region. Latin America, of course, tells a different story with the increased filings of international patents at a much higher rate. And for this, I have samples from Caribbean countries. So very briefly, and I understand that you can't take in all of this information, but this is an example of what has been happening, at least between the years 1998 and 2015. It hasn't changed much in 2019, but these are the figures that I was able to get for you from WIPO. And these figures give you an indication of exactly how many patents have been filed during that period. As I said before, it is not a major area in which innovation and technology takes place, and therefore the filing of patents would be much greater in certain other areas of the world than in the Caribbean nations. It doesn't mean that there isn't business to be done. As I've said, foreign direct investments, foreign direct investors file patents that are related to their work in the Caribbean, but these patents are not endogenous to the Caribbean region, meaning that there are not so many inventions coming out of the region that have been patented. So continuing with the Caribbean situation, the region is small. Innovation and technology activities are far less than what obtains in Latin America and Asia. And I will get to Latin America in a short time. But there is still great opportunity for business as the region becomes more attractive to foreign direct investors. This is especially so in the case of Guyana, which is Caribbean by culture, but sits on the continent of South America. Incidentally, I am Guyanese. I am from Guyana. So I am one of those who bridges that particular gap. Of course, we are the only English-speaking country in all of South America. So we fit between Latin America and the Caribbean. The discovery of oil in large quantities has put Guyana in the forefront of a lot of things that have been happening. For example, the Secretary of State of the United States, Mike Pompeo, visited last week in order to do a couple of things. One of them was to ensure that there was more foreign direct investment going from Guyana, between Guyana and the United States of America. Of course, ExxonMobil was instrumental in many of those oil discoveries. They've got almost a monopoly on the oil wells that have been found in those areas. So there is great opportunity for growth and development in Latin America and the Caribbean. And in fact, going on about Guyana again, it is poised, they say, to become the new America because of those oil funds, the direct investments coming from China and the United States and everyone else who wants a bottle of oil. Now, all of the Caribbean countries, you need to know, are signatories to the different regimens for intellectual property. Every single one of them is signatory to some one of the major conventions, such as the Berne Convention, the Patent Corporation Treaty, the Paris Convention, the Trade-Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights, TRIPS, which all of those countries, because they are members of the WTO, could not avoid signing on to. Because if you wanted to do trade with the WTO, then they wanted the guarantee for minimum level of intellectual property rights protections. And so these countries have had to sign on to TRIPS. There was no possibility of avoiding that. So there are varying degrees to which these conventions have been implemented in the individual territories. And that is because they're not self-executing. What happens with these things, and you're all lawyers, or most of you, so you would understand that in order for these conventions to take effect within the legal system of a country, in these circumstances, they've had to be made into law by some means or other. They had to be enacted in one form or another into the local legislation. To the extent that that has been done, that is the level of protections available to anyone who wishes to register patents or any other form of the IPRs. The second thing about that is that the political union of CARICOM, which are the 15 states within the Caribbean community, which is a political union, as I've said, the whole headquarters are in Georgetown, Guyana, and it was done for economic and international relations benefits. Most of these countries are English speaking, with the exception of Haiti and Suriname. But of course, each of them retains their autonomy when it comes to intellectual property. And there is no overarching convention that allows intellectual property to be regularized for all the countries. So in other words, if you go to Antigua, for example, you will be dealing with the laws of Antigua and any conventions that they may have signed on to. So don't go and register in Antigua and expect protections in Trinidad unless there is something that gives you that kind of reciprocity. So within the Caribbean region, we have all of those anomalies And it is to be expected that while it is exciting, it can be a little more challenging when it comes to dealing with registration of patents and other areas such as those. Copyright, as I've said, is a major IP that is used because the Caribbean is well known for its tourism and hospitality business, as well as music. I don't think there's anyone in this chat room today who has not heard of soca, calypso, or reggae. It's impossible to avoid reggae. Everyone in the world knows about Bob Marley, and that is a Jamaican invention. So the music is there, the carnivals are there, especially for those who are New Yorkers that live in Brooklyn or anywhere around there. You get a sense of how much has been exported to the rest of the world. So it is not as though the region doesn't have anything to offer. What it needs is more in terms of development, and some of that is coming from the FDI. Now, coming to the issue of the COVID pandemic, I think we understand that it's caused much of the world to come to a standstill. And for the regions that we're looking at, well, it has stopped everything. So there have been many attempts to make things work again. And in these regions, the Caribbean and Latin America, I believe that innovation and determination have caused members in those societies to get moving again and to try to put their energies to work. The region is reopening for business, and there's a new energy that gives one the feeling that people have become more aware of the need to use new and emerging technologies to create a future. But I have to touch on the trends in Latin America. And one of the major things happening in the Latin American region has been towards openness and international cooperation. And of course, the benefits of membership within the international IP system can be illustrated by lessons learned from the PCT, to which most Latin American nations are signatories. Since most of those countries have acceded to the treaty, they've seen boosts in their patent applications as a result. And on the screen, you have an idea of how many registrations have been made in those countries in Latin America, from 0 to 100,000. And this is over a period of 5 years. So Latin America has been growing steadily. And what has been happening is that the Madrid system, to which they are also signatories, allows for applicants to apply for trademarks in their domestic markets, as well as to be able to have the kind of reciprocity that I mentioned before in relation to the Caribbean region. The challenges that are being experienced with the workings of the IP system in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic are related in no small part to how IP offices operate in all of these countries. And what we have found is that certainly in the Caribbean region, there have been efforts to create searchable databases in most of the countries. However, only in Trinidad and Tobago can you patent filings. Everything else has to be done in person. And this makes it very difficult for, in normal times, to have to go in person to get some of these things done. It is exacerbated in these times when one is prevented by illness, fear of illness, from reporting to those offices to make filings possible. So there's very little that has been done so far to make it more accessible and more possible to get business done in those regions. However, what I have to say is that while there are, please take the slide, there are, all right. What I have to say that is while there are limitations and challenges, for example, limited online registration facilities, not enough trained IP personnel, not enough use of technological facilities, IP offices which are not cyber aligned, and of course, in-person transactions. There are wide opportunities as well. I've noted, and this is a common trend of thought, that people from these regions are laid back, don't work too hard, everything is sun, sand, and sea, and the Yemen. And I don't know where to get that from. I've been to Jamaica so many times, and I'm not too au fait with that term. And of course, I am from the Caribbean. It is not true that the ordinary person has the luxury of being laid back and laissez-faire and whatever happens, and nothing is done to time. People work very hard, are determined and motivated. And while those attitudes, as I've said, exist, a few are privileged to stand and stare. So in my view, there is great hope for the future of international IP law and policy in practice. There is going to be major growth in trade and industry in Caribbean and Latin America. There is skilled, high-level skilled personnel. There is need for technological expertise in developing IP infrastructure and need for litigation expertise in all areas of IP across these regions. In conclusion, I will say that I believe that there is hope for the future of IP. And as we meet in forums such as these, make connections and create opportunities for development, these things will in turn help us all to contribute to the making of a better world for ourselves and the next generations wherever we choose to do it. Personally, my motto is scholarship for social change. And I trust, of course, that the conference will enlighten, inspire, and provide all of us with the energy to take the next step, not just for good, but for greatness. I thank you for your attention.
Abiola, thanks for the wonderful presentation. So, audience, do we have any questions from you for Dr. Abiola for this informative and wonderful session? Any questions from the audience? Like, can we have any questions from the audience? So they can, give me the opportunity to open their video and they can, join here. Okay, we have Sakit.
Hi, thank you very much for sharing all this information and enlightening us. My apologies. I have to confess that I was unaware of such amazing growth, trend, and pattern. So thank you very much. It was, as I said, I was ignorant of this, and I don't mind acknowledging it. So thank you. With that, I have a question.
You're most welcome.
How are you generating, you and the team, how are they generating the process of intellectual property so that it matches or it is helpful for many companies, lawyers, law firms, or companies to file patents?
As I've said, it is a work in progress. So the people like me who are policy analysts and creators of policy try to help them to find a way to create legislation and other framework that will help lawyers to get the jobs done, that will help companies to become more competitive, and it would increase the general awareness that these IPRs are available and need to be used. So it is a work in progress. And as with anything else, you've got some resistance coming from the policy makers themselves. I'm sure you're aware that there is this argument of whether IP is good for you or not. And with that, it's always an uphill task. So lawyers who want to get involved in this have to be a little adventurous and willing to work a little harder to help to make this happen. But I think that at the end, there is a reward to be had because of the growth that's happening there as against other parts of the world.
Thank you very much.
I hope
If
I've
I could be of
answered
any
your
help,
question. I'm sure you can. The more the merrier.
So thank you so much, Abiola, for joining us as a keynote session.
Thank you very much.